If space is water, where does the watery space begin? Where is the edge? Well, if we start listening to what the Bible tells us in some ancient scriptures, maybe we should listen to all of it. It says God placed the firmament in the sky to separate the waters of the heavens from the waters below. I have no idea what that means, but I'm starting to get an interesting picture. And then how did God create the flood? It tells us that God opened the gates of heaven to let the water pour in on the earth. Okay, now I'm starting to see how you can create a flood. If space is water, it's starting to make more sense. And then suddenly, vacuum just becomes a myth and not a scientific fact. Because the simple basic physics of a vacuum in space just doesn't work. If there are any scientists that actually just think about this, or physicists, the whole thing of vacuum in space is just not compatible with any kind of physics formula or physics that we can put to it. Where does the vacuum begin? Vacuum is one of the most powerful forces of nature. Where does that vacuum begin? We often get confused between gravity-free and vacuum. They're not the same thing. Just because there's no gravity doesn't mean you're in a vacuum. And just because you're in a vacuum doesn't mean there's no gravity. The two are not the same thing. So don't get confused by vacuum and gravity-free. What you can't do in space or in a vacuum, what you can't do in infinite vacuum is you can't propel sound. You can't have explosions, fire, propulsion, jet engines, rockets, none of this stuff. Can't do that because there's nothing to propel against. And then these guys on YouTube that make these vacuum tubes, they go, oh, look, I created a vacuum tube in my garage. I'll show you that you can propel a rocket in a vacuum. I go, really? You've lost your brain. You're comparing a fishbowl in your garage to the infinite vacuum of space? You really lost your mind, dude. And then you start watching like SpaceX sending a rocket up into space, and the very well-trained presenter that's got all the buzzwords. She knows all the lingo and all the buzzwords. And at one stage I was watching and she says, and the rocket is about to enter the vacuum of space. Really? And millions of people are watching this and they believe this, you see? They just, the rocket just entered the vacuum of space. Where? How did it, where? Please frickin' explain that to me. In scientific terms, not in BS terms. Oh, you won't understand it. No, please try me. I want to understand this. Explain to me where that vacuum begins. And we start realizing that everything we've been told about the moon landing, space, is probably one of those big hoaxes. It is a tough one to swallow, but we're going to have to start swallowing it sooner than later. The longer they string us along, the longer this is.